Walk and Talkers. We had another fantastic discussion last week. It took us 2 walk and talks to get us through Sarai, Hagar, and the 5 O's. But we did it last week, and I think it was a pretty clean run. So we were coming out of Genesis 15 and 16 when we discussed it. And if you missed it, if this is your first video, the 5 O's include order, opportunity, opposition, obedience, and outcome. Order, make sure that you are living your life in order according to God. Opportunity, those are events or challenges that God sets up in our lives that we take on because He asks us to, or He put it on our heart. Opposition, things are going to come against you in your life when you're trying to do God's will. So something's going to come up. And through that opposition, we have to be obedient to what God asks us to do. Without the obedience, it's so easy to fall on the opposition. The outcome is whatever happens. If you were obedient, if you did what God asked you to do, or if you weren't, we have to deal with the outcome. And sometimes the outcome surprises us, even if we do the right thing. All right, so what were the 5 O's for Sarai? Well, this is just an example. Everyone talked, everyone had their own point of view. We agreed on some things and some things we didn't, and you know what? That's okay. So for Sarai, order. We know that she and her husband Abraham were trying to follow God's word and trying to follow His voice because they had been guided out of their hometown and sent somewhere else, and they followed God, what God asked them to do. Opportunity, I believe for Sarai, this time the opportunity was to wait on God. Abraham had been promised to have someone who would inherit everything that God was giving him, and she had the opportunity to wait to see how God did that. But the opposition is being patient and dealing with the time when God did not seem to be moving fast enough. Was she obedient through this? Well, it looked like she took things into her own hands because she took her slave Hagar and allowed Hagar to sleep with her husband in order to make sure that they had an inheritor instead of waiting on God. So I don't think obedience, that's the kind of obedience that God is talking about, but this is what she did. And what was the outcome? Well, Hagar became pregnant, and then Sarah resented Hagar. So that is Sarai's story. So let's look at things from Hagar's point of view. So was she living a life of order? She lived in Sarah and Abraham's household as a slave. So with Abraham and Sarai being people who believed in God and lived according to God's rule, then she at least knew about God and had watched God work. So I would say that her house, we can assume that she was in order. Opportunity. Well, this opportunity, I don't know if this opportunity came from God or not, but Sarai, her master, asked her to sleep with Sarai's husband. The opposition, we don't even know if Hagar really wanted to do this. She could have been in love with the boy who, handled the hay stalls. We don't know what's going on in that situation. We don't know her story. But she was obedient to Sarah and Abram and going on and sleeping with Abram. And the outcome was she ended up pregnant. And the outcome became interesting because she ended up pregnant, and then she got a bit of an attitude with Sarai, her master. Sarai, her master, ended up punishing her, so she ends up running away. But when she gets in contact with God, when Hagar gets back in contact with God after she ran away, that's when God tells her she needs to go back to Sarah. So Hagar got a little bit of a big head. She ended up getting punished for it. Then she had to come back and eat crow because God told her to go back home. So in summary of all of this, Sarai felt that since she couldn't have children, she went on and gave her slave Hagar to Abraham so that Abraham would have someone to inherit all that they were building. And it looks like it backfired a little bit on them. But what is interesting is how God has worked through this. Not only does he continue to look over Abram and Sarai through this whole thing, he also looks over Hagar. When Hagar cries out to him, God listens. Now, this whole situation didn't come without consequences. Yes, there's a consequence. And what God told Hagar was, your son is going to be a wild donkey. He is going to have beef with everybody. But I am going to bless him with many, many, many descendants. So God blessed Hagar's child in spite of all of this mess that was created. And I just love how God is still in there. He is still working with us when we call out to him, even though we have messed up. There are consequences, but he is still with us. All right, so that was last week's discussion. This week, we will be studying Sarai, Lot's daughters, and the 5 O's. And this will be coming from Genesis chapters 17, 18, and 19. And I'm about to read those chapters now. So you can cut it off now, or you can listen through. But either way, I will see you soon. Bye, Walk and Talkers. Genesis 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you and will increase your numbers. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner, those who are not your offspring. Whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Then God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. When he had finished speaking with Abraham, God went up from him. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in his household or bought with his money, every single male in his household, and circumcised them. as God told him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13. Abraham and his son Ishmael were both circumcised on that very day, and every male in Abraham's household, including those born in his household or bought from a foreigner, was circumcised with him. 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set those before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked. "There, in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was just past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." When the men got up to leave, they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him." Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." The men turned away and went toward Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham spoke up again. "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5 people? If I find 45 there," he said, "I will not destroy it." Once again he spoke to him. "What if only 40 are found there?" He said, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there?" He answered, "I will not do it if I find 30. Abraham said, "Now that I have been so bold to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there?" He said, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" He answered, "For the sake of 10. I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. Chapter 19. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both old and young, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Get out of the way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find that door. The 2 men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here, son-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them to safety out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they brought them out, one of them said, flee for your lives and don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. But Lot said to them, no, my lords, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. He said to him, very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it. This is why the town was called Zor. By the time Lot reached Zor, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Lot and his 2 daughters left for Zor and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zor. He and his daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father. That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day, the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let's get him drunk to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today.